And we are live. Welcome, Nikki. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, enjoying the sunshine.
I know. So, you have had a very important and busy week. We were just checking in on the incredible summit that your organization has been hosting, facilitating, curating this week. Do you want to? I feel like we have to start there because it's probably where your head's at.
Yeah, of course, it is where my head is at. It's just kind of floating back down to earth. So we organise a summit, or fancy word for a conference, basically. And this was the 8th one that we have done. The 3rd one that we've done online because of COVID curveball, but we've kept it online. And essentially, it's about bringing together loads of different people. It's predominantly healthcare professionals and people who work in the maternity space or the birth world, to really have some big conversations around how we can make birth better. And we were looking in particular this time at vulnerabilities to birth trauma. So what makes some people more vulnerable to being affected than others? So we were going straight to some big, tough, big hitting topics. But it was a beautiful 2 days, and everybody has been left feeling inspired and hopeful and equipped with lots of light bulbs and ideas to take forward. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. And just again, like, makes me so happy to know there's so many smart people kind of galvanizing around such an important cause, which of course is what you spend all your working days and probably some of your non-working days thinking about and working on. So would you like to tell us kind of who you are, what's your role, and kind of why you're here having a conversation about confidence?
Yeah, of course. So I run Make Birth Better. We're a collective of parents and professionals working together to end suffering from birth trauma. So what we mean by that, because it's still a bit of a kind of niche phrase for some people, what we mean by birth trauma is perhaps there was something or a series of events or experiences, both in your journey towards birth or pregnancy, the birth itself, and that journey afterwards, that you found deeply distressing, very unsettling, and very challenging to kind of make peace with. So that's what we do. We work on support. So we put out tons of support through our website and other mediums as well. We do loads of campaigning, and we drive our income through training, which we're really proud of as a really interesting social impact model. But essentially, we're 100% self-funded, so that works really well too.
Amazing. And we're here to talk about confidence, particularly in the charity sector. Confidence is a competitive advantage. And I guess there's 2 parts to that story. One is the collaboration we've had where all of the team at Make Birth Better were part of Bond 6 and Bond 6 graduates. And you have been so supportive and very vocal in articulating the immense value that came from that experience. But you're also a woman who has navigated this sector, now the CEO of a charity. Like, you've been on your own journey with confidence and are still on it, as we all are, as I am.
Yeah.
So maybe we should start there. Like, you want to tell me a bit about your own confidence journey?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many angles to this, isn't there? I'm sure with everybody you interview, like, oh, we could talk for hours. I guess the plotted history to the story of Make Birth Better around confidence that I absolutely want to share. And, you know, as you say, we're still on that journey of confidence and facing the ups and downs that come with that. But I started my adventure into the charity space when, kind of around about really when I was a student. My husband, now husband, and I co-founded an organisation that was all about providing educational resources to schools in East Africa. And it was really interesting because we both ran that as like co-leaders. But what happened after university is he went on to like own this relatively small organization front that, really bold, pitching for big funding, winning awards. And I didn't feel safe enough to do that, partly because I had some challenges with the charity, which I now understand as more of my kind of anti-racism journey, but also I needed the comfort of a big brand to sit around me to feel like I had a stage, or that I had worth as a person. Like the idea that Rob could just go and like run this organization as a 20-year-old just blew my mind. So I started out with Cancer Research UK on the graduate program. But what was really interesting in a big organization like that, and a big, incredible organization, I hasten to add, taught me just an enormous amount, was that as a young, ambitious, natural leader who had this urge to lead around meaningful change, there was a mismatch. You know, I kept being told to like earn my stripes, and you know, I was one job I didn't get because I wanted to move out of fundraising, and they were almost in the feedback saying, you're just kind of too ambitious, you're too interested in goals and targets. So they wanted to mold me into what they wanted me to be, but it didn't quite fit, and that kind of kept my confidence down. I think it was kind of like, oh, you know, there's no place for you here. And interestingly, then the kind of beginning to change was beginning to just like listen to those feedback loops, right? There's so many things around us telling us that we are good at what we do, that we've got potential, that we could do more, but society kind of pushes against those, doesn't it? And we don't always listen. But we then took a sabbatical. Rob and I traveled across Africa, and we wrote a book showcasing Africa's most inspirational social entrepreneurs. And as part of that, we wrote about and learned a lot about social entrepreneurship. And I was like, oh, I really think I'm a social entrepreneur, but I don't think I dare try to be. You know, I had this strong sense of like, oh, there's so much of me in this, but you know, what is that? What do I do with that? Anyway, we come back, and then Rob goes on to run like the UK's most prestigious kind of social enterprise organization. I decide to again find comfort in a brand, but a better version of that setup. So it was Red Bull running, basically setting up Red Bull's foundation in the UK. And that was amazing because it was dynamic and it was fun. And I just remember it was my first kind of safe to try space around entrepreneurship, because I had the safety of this fabulous brand, but I'm definitely getting paid. But I had this carte blanche to just be entrepreneurial and set up a team and grow something.
Which I think is known as entrepreneurship. That's like a whole...
Yeah, so it's like this safe step for me, because I had this burning sense that I was an entrepreneur, but I wasn't ready to say that. Like it was almost daring. And then I remember saying to my coach at the time, I'd really like us to raise like 400 grand a year, but thinking I secretly wish it could be so much more. And then, you know, when I left 5 years later, we were turning over 2 million. And again, that's another feedback loop. It's like, come on, Nikki, you got to listen to this. This is like telling you something. You're capable. You can do this. And then motherhood, Lauren. Oh, isn't that just the biggest curveball of all time? So we're getting there to make birth better in terms of where I am now. But any sense of beginning to listen to that confidence disappeared overnight for me in that transition to motherhood kind of 9 years ago. Lots of things were going on. I suffered postnatal PTSD as a result of a birth experience, which I had no idea existed. I did not know you could be that mentally unwell, that you couldn't leave your own home without having a panic attack, that you couldn't go outside without the bright lights kind of hurting your eyes, that you could feel fundamentally unsafe in the world all the time. So obviously that created a whole change in my relationship with myself and with confidence. And it was beyond starting again. It was like taking me to like below what the baseline had been. So that was an interesting twist, and something that I know a lot of, you know, we've talked about this, haven't we, you and I, but something that can really scupper your progress in this space, and is very common, of course, for a lot of us who've been through struggles around parenthood, motherhood. And then the long story short is, you know, it's 9 years on, I'm now running an organisation that is hooked into birth trauma and postnatal PTSD. And I never imagined I would rebuild my confidence to where it is today. But I have. And what's amazing is how much that confidence has changed in the 3 years since I started running Make Birth Better as well. You know, it was just beginning to feel like, okay, I've got a bit more of a sense of myself. I set up a small social enterprise, which I sold before I came to Make Birth Better. So that was this reminder, like, oh, actually, no, I think I am an entrepreneur still. I've still got this. There's something here. And then this beautiful coming together of opportunities arose with Make Birth Better. But I had no idea how fundamentally important confidence was going to be to this organization and to this role. Because when you might, someone said to me once, oh, it's quite a niche topic, isn't it? You know, maternal mental health or birth trauma. And my first reaction was to agree with them. And then I thought, no, I totally disagree. You know, we're going straight to the nub of patriarchal systems that silence women's voices. We are going straight into marginalization and power. We are going right into politics. And we're going into the fabric of the world, right? We all had to be born. So to show up in this space in the way that we wanted to, which was with these really strong, important beliefs and values around how we needed to make birth better, which is about us taking a full systems approach. It's about really focusing on those who are most affected by birth trauma and those living in marginalized groups. It was about being bold enough to challenge people we didn't disagree with, bold enough to say yes to big interview requests and things like that. We're on BBC News on Monday, which we never would have imagined we'd get there. And a really interesting part of it for us was this realization that this kind of two sides of a coin, that a slight lack of confidence was very much linked in with a fear of conflict or upsetting people. And that was holding us back because we had this strong sense that we didn't want to upset people. And in our journey around our work around kind of equity, diversity, inclusion and anti-racism, we've had to and continue to work at this challenge and rub we still feel, but we're really working on now, around disagreeing with people. And the wonderful quote that you provided us with, which is scribbled on the front of my notebook here, may our confidence upset them, just went straight to the nub of that issue. So yeah, Upfront helped us massively to show up for the conversations that we had been wanting to show up for, or that we had been showing up to, but with unquantifiable levels of fear. And also allowed us to stop making ourselves smaller. So someone new joined our team, Lauren, she's amazing. And she kind of said, why do you guys call yourselves small? And I was like, well, because, you know, we're only, you know, we're 4 part-time employed people. We've got a further 4 people around that. You know, we're only 8 people, you know, we're not turning over much money yet. And she was like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. And that was also the beginning. And that actually collided really nicely with our journey through Upfront, which was kind of like, this realization that by making ourselves, by saying to other people that, oh, we're only small, we were positioning ourselves in a space that actually we didn't want to be. You know, we want to be big. We want our impact to be bigger. Yeah. And we want to be judged on much, much more than how much money do you raise every year, because that is a really big factor in the third sector, which is that your value as a leader is often very closely tied to how much money does your organization turn over, and particularly in fundraising, I would say.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, one of the things that I love about the kind of how we work together, and it isn't, part of it is to do with the fact it's like it is 7 people and sometimes 4 people, and that you were able to move through the bond very much as an organization. It's like every single woman in this organization has had this experience. We're going through it together. And so the consequence of that is so powerful. It means there's a shared language, shared understanding, shared knowledge. There's mantras that you scribble on your notepad that everybody feels connected to and inspired by.
We've all got the mug as well, Lauren. Everyone in the team got the mug for Christmas, and it says, "May our confidence upset them." Yeah.
Yeah. And I wondered if you could say a wee bit about, very practically, what that looked like. Because I think, I was inspired by how you kind of took that and made it your own, because we know that there will be charity leaders and team leaders listening in thinking there's just no way that we could fit this in. How on earth do you find the time? And one of the things we're really proud of is that we have designed the bond to be self-led, and so that you can mold it around timetables and working hours and different geographic locations and whatever kind of circumstance your team finds themselves in. So can you say a wee bit about how that bit worked?
Yeah, absolutely. On a practical level, it was really important that we worked through this together, because we were talking about really changing the way our organization shows up, and therefore everyone had to be part of it. We kind of took the framework of Upfront and did our own thing, and we still are now. So we had an allocated time in the diary where we would come together and talk. And it didn't matter how many of the videos you may have watched or whether you joined the live or not, but we had those conversations during the period where Upfront was live. And we just shared our learnings and all of our aha moments. We together were able to start making a commitment to stop apologizing, for example. And I think the small nuanced changes in language that you taught us, I mean, that's something I now practice every single day. So I delete I'm just asking because, that kind of like, those phrases that make us small, or I will say to people in the team and all the time, like, no, we're not apologizing. We don't need to make ourselves small by apologizing all the time. So that has been a really kind of practical change. And basically we kind of select, because obviously what's amazing about the bond is there's so many resources, as well as the videos that you go through. There's so many links to different like talks and books and articles. So we use that as inspiration for our own learning journey. And we still do now, because, anyone that receives Lauren's newsletters and or has attended any of her free webinars as well will know that it's not, there's this live experience which kind of grounds you in the philosophy of Upfront. And then there's all this other stuff that comes with it. I would say your newsletter is one of the very few that I regularly open. And thank you to the link for Adele's carpool, which I did actually just watch before I came on this. But it's that constant stream. It's that steady, constant stream and reminder, because I often use this analogy of church where, people will say that part of what keeps them coming back to any church or religious community is to come back to be reminded of the things that they know, the things that they forget to remember. And you have that with Upfront, because you're always there with us, Lauren.
Yeah.
So you come into our inboxes and send us links and keep us all the time just on this journey. So we keep being reminded. And you know, and we've changed, right? So this idea of what's safe to try, we talk about that a lot. We talk a lot about how can we really show what we stand for. So we now have a whole new page section of our website, the what we stand for section. So we've put a lot of emphasis on that. We're no longer talking about being small. And what you said just before about helping you to raise more money. So this is a really tangible thing, is as a social entrepreneur, one of the things that you can explore in the third sector is raising investment, right? And bringing in angel investors, the same that you can do in a for-profit business. And I'm just at the beginning of having my first conversations with investors and potential equity partners and so on. And it's uncomfortable. It's kind of pushing me outside of my like low risk comfort zone. But I'm the most ready I have ever been to show up for those conversations and start making risks because of the bedrock of learning that we have been through as part of UPFRONT.
That's really exciting and bold moves. I'm excited to see what comes of that. And I want, like, what's your perspective on if we take a step back and think about charities in the third sector as a whole? You know, it's a sector you've been very immersed in for many, many years. And I can't remember the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but it's like the majority of that sector is made up of charities like yours, right? They're under 10 people, part-time leaders. You know, a lot of us would associate the charity sector with the really big, you know, the Cancer Researches and the Macmillans, and of course they are very much part of it. But the bulk of organisations that make up that sector are very much like your own. And you know, this conversation and our collaboration has got so many tangible examples in it of how confidence translates into progress, competitive advantage, whether that's around your marketing, your storytelling, your fundraising, the way you run your conference, that you decide to have a conference in the first place. So I wonder, like, what would you say to other charity leaders who are in your position as to why investing in something like Bond 7, which starts in a month's time, it would be, you know, a really brilliant move for their organization and a very worthwhile investment?
I think it's important to acknowledge that in size, as in people, organizations like ours, and like the thousands and thousands of organizations like ours that are out there, these decisions are really difficult because there's always an opportunity cost, because you can't, you know, you only have such a finite amount of money. So if you choose to invest in one thing, you're essentially choosing not to invest in something else that could also have a huge impact. And it was a big decision for us to sign up to the bond. But what I would say in terms of that, there's this twofold level of impact that you're essentially signing yourselves up to. So there's the personal journey. I have no doubt that everybody in the third sector, regardless of their size of organization, every woman who is exploring confidence could benefit from unlocking some of their struggles and actively tackling confidence. But in terms of adding value to small organizations, there is very much a habit of small organizations making themselves feel and appear small, despite the fact that many of them are working on, if not most, I'm sure, working on huge issues around social and environmental change. If you know that the issue you're working on is massive, then your voice deserves to be massive, and nothing should be holding you back, least of all confidence. So, and the ripples are so tangible. You know, we have more volunteers signing up as our champions program than we ever had before. I'm feeling a sense of readiness to pitch for funds in a totally new, different and entrepreneurial, exciting way. Yeah. We have had more media requests in the last month than we ever have done before. We've just had more people sign up to our summit than we ever have done before. So it will make a difference if you commit to it, if you really actively, particularly if a whole team commits to it and works on it together and keeps those conversations going, then that will have a lasting impact in your organization. You will grow, whether it is financially or in terms of your on the ground impact, you will grow.
Amazing. I love those statistics that you just rallied off around the media requests and the numbers all going up. It's just brilliant. And, you know, such a testament to how because I also think you've heard me say this a lot in the bond. I often say, like, insight without action is useless, right? You know, when you show up in the bond, you will get a lot of new information and new insights and new models and theories, but you will also be very actively encouraged to put those things into practice.
Yeah.
And it's very much about action. You know, that's what confidence is.
Yeah.
It's the bridge between thinking about something and actually doing the thing, the bridge between having a thought, an idea, and then making it real. And I think that the way the Make Birth Better team have been really committed to, like, how can we try this? How does this translate into our day-to-day activities? What are the ways we can keep this message really alive? You know, something as simple as a message on a coffee cup, but those things matter. You know, those things are really powerful because these are the small moments where, as you say, we're reminding ourselves of our power, of our potential, of our agency. And I think the other thing I was reflecting on when I was kind of preparing for our conversation was we also know that the majority of these charities that we're talking about in the UK's third sector are made up of women. And they're led by women.
Wow. Yes. I don't know the data, but if I think about when I first started in the third sector, we must have been 90% kind of junior management and so on, women, if not more. And then as you went more into senior manager and upwards, it was all men. So it depends on your organization. There still is, in terms of what the average should be in terms of representing the sector, there are extraordinary numbers of men in leadership roles, which represent organizations which are probably 90% plus women. Really interesting that as a sector conversation, I think, because it's beginning to change, but certainly the sector has not led the way in terms of making work for women in the way that it probably should have. Not even probably, it should have. It's only really COVID really that you're beginning to notice ideas of like hybrid working coming in, and potentially part-time, and potentially it might be okay to like pick your kids up from school and keep working later on or whatever. But as a sector, absolutely, God, is this work just vital? Because I think it's holding back the power of the sector. The fact that, you know, let's say we're 90% plus women, confidence is probably the number one thing that holds us all back in reaching our potential, however you might measure that. Wouldn't it be great if we could put the whole sector on up front? Oh, amazing.
Well, I do have an idea that's not quite ready to be revealed yet, that if we hang on once we check out, that I want to share with you, get your perspective on that. But I thank you so much for this conversation. You know, I think your stories and how you've articulated your journey and the value, you've made such a compelling case that confidence counts and then some in this in the charity sector, and that it does impact the numbers that really matter, and it also impacts mindsets and how people show up and the actions that people take towards creating the change that you exist to create in the world. So thank you for the work you do. Thank you for taking the time. I want to remind everybody listening in that we have our free masterclass next Thursday evening time for folks in the UK. And we will be spending an hour really diving into imposter syndrome and introducing you to the idea that you do not have imposter syndrome, that none of us have it. We have been gaslit into thinking that we have this syndrome to no fault of our own, and kind of what can we do about that? Where has that come from? What does that mean for how we're showing up at home and at work in our organisations? You will meet your Bond 7 coach, Dr. Yekimi Otaro, and we have 2 Bond graduates, Donna Patterson and Aisatu Ayimore, who are going to join us. So it will be very high energy, very inspiring, very motivating. You will get key tools and strategies to take away with you. The link is in the comments, totally free. So come along, invite your sisters, your colleagues. I think we've had nearly 800 people have signed up already. So it's going to be great.
We're coming. Yeah. We're on your list.
And the Make Birth Better folks will be there. And if you are curious about what it would look like to enrol your team in Bond 7, which starts on June 5th, our next 6-week programme, you can talk to me at lauren@weareuppfront.com, go to our website. We have got discounts for charities. There's all sorts of ways we can make it work for charity and not-for-profit organisations. So don't hesitate to get in touch. And with that, I will let you get back to your incredible summit, Nikki. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.